Welcome to the Employer Branding Show, interviews with employer branding and recruitment practitioners to help you kickstart your own hiring efforts. Today, we are joined by Jonas Molbech, the co-founder of Hume Agency, a creative employer branding agency. Jonas, great to have you on the Employer Branding Show today.
Man, it's great to be here. Been waiting for it.
Awesome. So for those of us who don't know who you are and what do you do, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? My name is Jonas, as you said. You can't say Jonas in the English pronunciation. Jonas here in Denmark. It's a funny thing, but yeah, I'm the co-founder of Hume Agency, and we're kind of on a mission to rephrase the term employer branding. It's, as we see it right now, it's full of BS. It's really intangible. It's really hard to get a grasp on what it really is and what it does to a company. And in my mind, it's a company's foundation. It's their reputation, and it's like the only factor that really plays a role when trying to attract the best talent out there. And yeah, which is actually what everyone wants, just without prioritizing their reputation as an employer. So yeah, just to keep it brief, we help startups and scale-ups attract the right candidates, both faster and cheaper through employer branding, as we see it.
Nice. Now, you mentioned in the description of your company, you talk about creative employer branding. My background is recruitment, so whenever I do employer branding, it's quite kind of functional, in my opinion. Anyway, what do you mean by creative employer branding?
Well, we have kind of a different background. We don't come from the recruitment background. We are creative souls. We love to get tons of ideas, and we are what we call a network company, meaning we work together as well with other creative people, bureaus, freelancers, when we work with film and still photography. So in that sense, when I say creative, it's because we want to bridge the gap between the candidate pipeline a company can have, and then fix the right communication line and create content around that communication to really attract those talent out there. I can tell you some more about the process later, but it's all around creating quality content that really gets what your company is all about and what's your role about, what are your people and your culture about, and using creative skills to capture that and to grasp attention and get talent in your pipeline.
Fantastic. So let's talk through an example then. So if you've got a client, a brand new client, they've just called you up, Jonas, we love we heard about Hume Agency on the Employer Branding Show. We'd love to start working with you. How would you approach employer branding for, let's say a new startup that just raised some funding, looking to hire 20 new people? How would you kind of start that journey with them?
Well, again, as I said, I'm pretty tired of the fact that employer branding really are doing no good for companies as it is right now. So we are really about employer branding enabling better, cheaper, and faster recruiting. And to do that, we always go in and look at their talent pipeline. So you're saying that they're about to hire 20 people. That might be 15 in engineering and then a couple here and there. If they have a big need inside of, let's say, engineering, we really look at that candidate audience. So we take this, what we call an external analysis, and look at the audience that they're about to hire, and see what are their preferences in an employer. Where do they spend time online? What kind of content do they like? What kind of people are they? What are their emotional triggers, as we say? And afterwards, we go inside the company, because employer branding is all about telling the truth about the culture and about what kind of people you are. So if you're about to hire engineers, you should, of course, look at the engineers inside of your company, because they know why they're there, they know why they applied, they know why they haven't left yet, and they know what kind of strengths you have as a workplace and as a company. And that's a really easy way to create a bridge between what you want to have and what you already have, and you have the answers already inside your company about what your strengths are. So that is the first kind of step we would take. That is to look at who are you looking for, what are your talent pipeline, and which kind of people inside of your company do represent that group, and we can talk to them and get a good grasp of your strengths, you can say. And And from there, we have the foundation. Then the creative part starts, and that's where we look at all these stories that we actually uncover when talking to employees inside the company. Like they just uncover all these buzzwords you see on career sites and on LinkedIn. They tell their unique stories about why it's a nice place to work and how their journey have been. And in that process, our creative bodily minds just get lots of ideas on content and different types of content we could produce that could tell that story to attract the right kind of candidate. And then, yeah, depending on the type of client and the type of hire, we either deliver frameworks to the client so they can create the content themselves. Employer branding is not a day-to-day thing. It's an ongoing process, constantly being improved and being evaluated. So some clients want just to have the frameworks and know which kind of content could work to these kind of hires and how they could do them themselves. Like how can they take these pictures or how can they tell these stories? So we deliver those frameworks, or we go in and execute them and help them with the execution part as well, taking pictures, doing the videos, doing the copywriting, all this kind of stuff.
Wonderful. So you've spoken about kind of auditing the audience, both internally, who they currently have working for them, and externally. Then, whilst talking to them, the people internally, capturing those stories that you could use to share branding and share content with that new audience that you've highlighted as potential candidates. And then you either deliver that in a form of kind of video content or photographic content, or give frameworks actually to the existing team to start distributing and sharing that that with the candidate pool. Is that a good summary?
Exactly. That's a great summary, and I think that summarizes as well how you can look at employer branding as this uncomprehensive thing that's just like, it's our employer brand and we don't know what it is. Is it an employer value proposition? Is it a new different color on my background and my LinkedIn picture? What is it? And in this way, this is one concrete example of how you can really narrow it down to example one specific talent hire need. And that's a great summary of how you can go about that need. Yeah. Fantastic.
And then what typical results would you see off the back of doing that kind of project?
We typically talk to the teams that are about to hire as well, and say something. It's really based on qualitative metrics as well, because it's hard to really track, because you don't know the content you're making. If a hire in a year could have been done because of that content you produced a year ago. So it's really hard to track just by engagement or number of applications, because many of our clients don't need more applications. They actually need fewer applications. And that's also a sense of, you can't really measure it just like traditional marketing. So we really go about it like qualitatively and say, just ask the candidates you get into interviews, like where did you hear about us? What did you like? Why did you apply? And all these insights you get from just these simple questions are insane. And we just hear from clients that many of the people they're talking to, candidates, they're telling that because of these videos, they got a good sense of what is the company culture like, what are the main challenges they're working on right now, and that just grabbed their attention and was like, this sounds like a place for me, and that's why they applied.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that story of individual candidates noticing content and bringing them through is so powerful from an employer branding perspective, because having more applicants doesn't necessarily help the process. Having more people at interview doesn't necessarily help the process. It's about the people you hire and the retention and their feeling of that process all the way through. That's really interesting. With that. And what kind of companies do you typically work with, Jonas? What's your kind of ideal client?
For the moment, we work a lot with scaling companies who are not huge yet. So between right now it's between 25 and 200 employees approximately. and companies that are really scaling at the moment and doesn't really know internally what to do with employer branding or what it is. Because we just, as you just said, the point of it all is to align candidates with the culture and with the people and with the product or service.
Yeah.
And if you narrow it down to that, it's really tangible for companies like these that don't have internal resources to handle this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why these are, and of course personally they're just funny to work with. Like we bond a lot, and it's always a nice journey to be a part of. So personally as well, it's the ideal client for us at the moment.
Companies of that size are fun, particularly those that are ready to throw a curveball out there and realize they need to do something different to differentiate themselves. I think it's I'd agree with that.
And the bar is set so low. Like you said, they differentiate themselves. Like it's insane how little it takes for companies at that point. Like everyone is telling the same story. We have startup environment. We are agile. We have great coworkers. We host a summer party. Like they're saying the same shit, and it's so easy just to tweak it a bit and come up with a personalized story. And that's what we really try to make companies understand, that the bar is set really low. With few resources, you could really differentiate yourself.
That's really interesting. And one thing you mentioned as well is, so companies that don't even realize they have or need an employer brand, you talk to them. What takes a company from not realizing they need an employer brand to start implementing something with you? What's the kind of the mindset shift that they go through there?
Well, on a practical level, we always have a discovery calls with potential new clients, and if they have no idea, you can say no idea, not no idea, but no. If they don't want to work with employer branding and they don't see the value in it, we are not here to convince them. That's the first point I want to make, because it's really an uphill battle, and we've tried it. It's an uphill battle if you don't see the value in it, because it's you have it with marketing and demand generation, and that's tied to revenue. So a CEO should understand that better than employer branding, because it's more tangible. So the process of getting them from not even knowing about employer branding and not seeing the value in it to being a client, there is no gap. Like every client we work with have a clear intention of knowing, first of all, who they are as a company, like knowing the employees' perception of them as a workplace, and really want to create that story and differentiate themselves out there, and invest in building something different than all the other scale-ups in the market. So if we get a sense in the first discovery call that this is a company that maybe don't know much about employer branding, but they have this wish to be like, we have this incredible story, and we might say, as all the other scale-ups, that we have a great culture, but we actually mean it, and this and this and this is why we have a great culture. And that's tangible, and we can work with that and create some amazing stories. And that's where we really go serious and go deep and go to the next level with the client.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I think there's a lot of pearls in there for any business that's looking to kickstart their own employer branding, about how they might go about doing that. And then
sorry, mate, you just fell out. I just
you can't hear me?
Yeah, it's good now again. You just fell out.
Okay. So I was saying there's lots of, I think there's some good pearls in there for startups, businesses that are looking to start their employer branding journey. Like obviously to have a conversation with you, but if they want to do it themselves, there's some tangible things that they can take out from that, about looking at the audience, looking at internal stories, sharing those, and starting seeing results from the narratives that the candidates themselves are giving. I always ask that whenever I'm talking to a new business is, what do your applicants say about your employer branding? If they're not saying anything, that's the red flag. It's, if they're saying something, at least there's some interaction there, there's some awareness about what's going on. You got time for some quick fire questions, Jonas?
Definitely.
Awesome. What's the tech stack that you use to help you create your employer branding for your clients?
As I said, we're not. Again, we are of course not a recruitment company. We are more to the branding and communication side. So we're not that deep into tech stacks. We use what they have already, and then we use metrics like qualitative metrics that we just talked about. Ask the candidates, ask applicants, where did you hear about us? Why did you apply? And to current employees, why you're still here? Where do you want to go? How do the company and your leadership help you on that journey? And of course, we look at metrics like time to hire, cost per hire, like the retention rate, and that's the primary things we look at when we do this. We don't really have this specific tech stack. We are more of a communications branding agency.
Okay, but I mean, when you're creating the employer branding, what tools do you use?
Yeah, of course. We use, for example, Riverside as a tech tool for. It's a really easy way, and companies could do this themselves as well. We use it to create what we call micro content, and micro content is just, again, looking at the target audience you wish to attract, going again inside of your own company, finding people representing that target group that you wish to attract, and then just interviewing them on Riverside. Just ask specific questions like, again, why did you apply? Why are you still here? What are your biggest challenges at the moment? How do you overcome them? How do your leadership help you? How did you see yourself develop in the next year? How have you developed in the past year? All these specific questions that candidates would be thrilled to hear about when applying for the same role that the person answering the questions are telling about. That's a really powerful tool, because a 30-minute Riverside recording with an employee could turn into 10 pieces of content easily, if not more. And that's a great way, because it's scalable. It's just conversations being recorded, and it can be used on different platforms. It can be used on career sites, on social media as well. So that's a really powerful tool in my opinion.
Yeah. And how would you slice and dice that content up from a 30-minute interview, for example?
We use DaVinci Resolve to slice it up, and it's just, you can have different timelines. It's really effective to work on this micro content. You just get it down on your computer, the Riverside recording into DaVinci Resolve, and then it's free as well. You can have a free version, and it's really, really good, and you can just easily cut it up into different pieces.
Brilliant. I think there's lots of people out there that could use that tech stack to start telling stories. Definitely. That's great. What's your most recommended book to people that are interested in getting involved in employer branding or new to recruitment, that kind of level?
When I started out, I really was into James Ellis' book, Talent Chooses You, which I find really, really interesting, and it just have lots of great points, and he writes funny, and it's just a joy to read. So I always recommend that book. And then, as a side note, I would recommend everyone working with employer branding to follow Chris Walker on LinkedIn. He's not talking about employer branding, he's talking about demand generation, but man, is the same thing. Take every aspect he's talking about and just change the words of marketing with employer branding, and you have it. It's just about capturing demand, capturing attention, and getting that into your pipeline. So he's a really interesting guy to follow as well, and for employer branding practitioners.
Two great names there to follow on LinkedIn, and certainly Talent Chooses You is a really good starter book for anybody that's looking at employer branding as an area to get involved in. And then finally, who's an up and comer in recruitment or employer branding that you think that we should be keeping an eye on as a future rising star, apart from yourselves?
Because I'm a lot into employer branding, I'm talking a lot to guys in recruiting as well, and I've been talking a lot to the great guy Nathan Jefferson, and he's a recruiter from the UK, and man, he's just always testing new creative solutions for recruiting, and he has a podcast as well with Nate Guggia, also a great guy to follow, called the Content Recruiter, I think. I just have to look that up. Don't hold me up on that. Yeah. But he's a great guy, and in a field that's pretty broken in many opinions, he's just Yeah, as I often say, a star player in fixing that. He's really worth following.
Wonderful. That's awesome. There's some great recommendations there for people listening. And we can put links to this in the show notes as well so people can follow up on that. And maybe we can get them on the Employer Branding Show as future guests as well.
Sure.
Jonas, if anybody's listening to this and they're an internal recruiter, head of talent, head of HR, people manager, and they want to start this journey towards employer branding, and they love what you're saying about it, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you and follow the work that you're doing with Hume?
Well, always reach out. We have, of course, I don't know if there's going to be any links, but we have our website, humeagencies.com, where on the contact page, there's a direct link to book a 30-minute call with me, and that's always no strings attached. I really enjoy just talking to lots of different people around the subject. If it's a potential partnership, or if it's maybe a new client, or if it's just talking about employer branding, I love to spend time with other people. So always just hit me up there. And I really speak a lot about employer branding on LinkedIn as well, Jonas Molbech-Kuskner. It's a Danish name, so it's maybe really hard to find me for some folks out there. But I post at least 3 times a week about employer branding.
Tremendous. We'll put links to the agency, and also your LinkedIn profile there, so people can follow up on that and get in contact. Jonas, thank you so much for being a guest on the Employer Branding Show.
And it's been a pleasure. Love talking to you as always.
Always. Thanks, Jonas. Bye, pal.
Man, all right, bye.